Let's just jump right in because there's one specific moment in television history that could have literally rewritten everything we know about one of the most beloved shows of all time. And no, we aren't talking about Ross and Rachel. We're not talking about Monica and Chandler either. We're talking about the ultimate what-if scenario, the Joey paradox. In this explainer, we're going to dig into a narrative pivot that terrified the writers, completely divided the fans, and really challenged the very definition of television romance. So think about it. What if Joey Tribbiani actually chose love over friendship? I mean, it's a massive disruptive premise, right? For years, we all understood the unspoken rule of this famous friend group. There are just some lines you absolutely never cross. Rachel was widely considered to be Ross's soulmate, period. And crossing that line meant risking the entire foundation of their found family. But I want you to just imagine Joey crossing that ultimate line anyway. Imagine him making the incredibly tough call that his own heart actually mattered more than the comfortable, established balance of the group.
Section 1. The unexpected pivot.
To really grasp why this was such a shock to the system, you have to remember who Joey was. He was famously the carefree one, right? The funny guy who never, ever took relationships seriously. But suddenly, we're hit with this absolute thematic whiplash, because for the first time in the entire run of the series, Joey wasn't chasing someone just for fun. He was genuinely terrified because his feelings were real. It caught him completely off guard. He tries to hide it, he wrestles with it, and most importantly, he's just consumed by guilt. He's falling for a woman who is theoretically off limits, and that creates this incredibly rich, dramatic tension that we had literally never seen from his character before.
And honestly, this brilliantly exposes a huge core misunderstanding of Joey's character. His biggest flaw was never actually commitment. It was fear. His real fear was hurting the people he loved and losing the only family he really had. Throughout all those years, Joey completely avoided emotional risks whenever they threatened the group dynamic. He stayed emotionally passive just to keep the peace.
Moving on to Section 2, Comfort versus Chaos. If we look at the structural mechanics here, we're basically looking at two completely different types of love. On one side, you have Ross and Rachel. That's passion, it's chaos, endless loops, and basically your standard sitcom fairy tale. It was an exhausting history of breakups and jealousy. But on the flip side, consider Joey and Rachel. That was comfort, peace. It was natural and real. When Rachel lived with Joey, she actually looked relaxed. He listened to her, he respected her, and he never pressured her. It was this surprisingly adult, calm dynamic that stood in stark contrast to the dramatic fireworks of her past. Which leads us to this pretty brutal question. What if love isn't destiny? Ross always believed he and Rachel were inevitable, that every mistake just circled back to them being the one for each other. But Joey choosing Rachel, and Rachel being genuinely happier with Joey, that forces Ross to confront the terrifying reality that maybe, just maybe, they weren't destined after all.
Section 3. The ripple effect.
Now, if the writers had fully committed to this relationship, it wouldn't have just broken some established emotional loops. It would have completely shattered the ecosystem of the show. Imagine those famous Thanksgiving dinners, but now they're just filled with this thick, unresolvable tension. Think about Chandler. He'd be utterly stuck between his fierce loyalty to his best friend Joey and his deep sympathy for Ross. And perhaps most painfully, imagine Monica. She'd be desperately trying to keep everyone together, while secretly knowing in her heart that Joey actually treats Rachel better than her own brother ever did. The entire balance of the group shifts overnight.
Section 4, Joey's true evolution.
Stepping away from the group dynamic for a second, let's focus inward. Joey making this choice isn't just about who Rachel ends up with. It's about Joey finally stepping out of his assigned role. He was always the safe friend, the loyal guy who would sacrifice his own joy for the group. So does he deserve happiness, even if it hurts someone he loves? It's a deeply human conflict. We're no longer in simple sitcom territory. It's a profound dilemma about sacrificing your safe, established identity for a real chance at honest love. And we actually see his answer in how he handles the fallout. It's a literal masterclass in growth. Quietly stepping aside, holding absolutely no resentment, and risking vulnerability just to be honest about his feelings. When Rachel ultimately rejects the relationship, Joey doesn't start some dramatic, toxic fight. He doesn't hold a grudge, he just simply accepts it. This completely subverts our expectations. By taking that rejection with such grace, Joey actually revealed way more emotional maturity than Ross showed in 10 whole years. Section 5. The safer path.
Unfortunately, we all know what happened next. The writers backed away from this complex emotional territory almost as quickly as they introduced it, largely because of the intense, divided fan reactions, and they basically returned to the broader tropes of television. Sitcoms are built to rely on the fairy tale. You know the drill. The big speeches, the airport chases, the endless traumatic longing. But Joey and Rachel represented real life. Their connection was awkward, it was gentle, and it was entirely unexpected. It's the kind of grounded relationship that actually sneaks up on people in the real world rather than being written in the stars. It ultimately comes down to this thought. Sometimes your soulmate isn't your grand passion. Sometimes it's the person who makes life feel easy. And that right there is the emotional thesis of our explainer today. That is exactly why this storyline, as brief as it was, still completely fascinates viewers decades later. Because it directly challenged everything we were taught to expect from television romance. Section 6. Love versus loyalty. As we bring this analysis to a close, let's just look at what this brief, chaotic storyline ultimately represented. This alternate timeline basically opened the door to a Joey who finally stopped settling, a guy who refused to just be a side character in his own life. It gave us a glimpse of a Rachel who actively chose peace and comfort over exhausting chaos. And above all, it was a bold dare. A dare to test what really happens when fierce loyalty and undeniable love collide head-on. Which leaves us with one final lingering thought. If you were Joey, would you have walked away for the sake of the friendship you spent years building? Or would you have fought for the person you genuinely loved, consequences be damned? It's the ultimate pop culture paradox. Thanks for joining me on this explainer today. Keep questioning the story, and I'll see you next time.